Evening, everyone. This is Urab Desai with the tropical update for Saturday, September 15th, 2018. If we take a look at the Atlantic Basin right now, you can see that the activity is slowly starting to finally die down after a very busy past 2 weeks that began ever since Florence formed off near the Cape Verde Islands 2 weeks ago. And now finally these storms are starting to die down. However, we still do have 3 active storms at the time in Tropical Storm Joyce, Tropical Storm Helene, and of course Florence, which is still holding on to tropical storm status after all this time. If we look at the current 5-day tropical weather outlook from the National Hurricane Center, you can also see that we have over here a disturbance, which is actually the remnants of once Tropical Storm Isaac, which was downgraded to a remnant low this past morning, as it's finally showing signs of even further weakening. However, it could possibly develop into the future as it heads further west into the Gulf of Mexico. However, right now the NHC only has at a 20% chance of development through the next 48 hours and through the next 5 days as well. If we took a look at former Tropical Storm Isaac right now, you can see that there is some thunderstorm activity going on. However, the thunderstorm activity is not directly over the center of circulation, which is right about here on the last frame, and the convection is definitely not organized at all. It's still very disorganized, and that's because it is being affected by wind shear of about 25 to 30 knots at the moment, and there's going to be further wind shear in the Western Caribbean as well. However, once it gets into the Gulf of Mexico around this area, the wind shear does lessen, so there's a chance that it could redevelop once it gets into the southern Gulf of Mexico. If we look at the track models, the forecast models, the ones that are still tracking Isaac do have it making its way into the Gulf of Mexico and then eventually impacting somewhere along the Texas coastline. Now, the intensity, on the other hand, it's interesting to see what the models are showing here, as all the models do actually have this system, the remnants of Isaac, re-strengthening into at least a tropical storm, and the majority of models even have it reaching Category 1 strength by day 5. So we still do need to watch former Tropical Storm Isaac to see if it does redevelop, and the Texas coast should be at least paying attention to this and keeping an eye on it, as it could still redevelop. Looking at Tropical Storm Joyce, you can see that Joyce is definitely not looking as good as it did this earlier yesterday, and that shows as it has now been downgraded to a 45 mile an hour tropical storm as opposed to a 50 mile an hour storm like it was yesterday. And you can definitely see that on the satellite image, as all of the convection is north of the center of circulation, which is right about here, and over the center it's just a naked swirl right now. There's no thunderstorm activity at all, as the storm is getting ripped apart by wind shear of about 30 to 40 knots and even higher wind shears in the area that's heading up to 70 knots, and the storm is definitely not going to survive there, and that can be seen in the track for Tropical Storm Joyce, as the NHC does have it weakening to a depression by Monday night and then dissipating here south of the Azores. And speaking of the Azores, right now they are dealing with Tropical Storm Helene, which now has sustained winds of 65 miles per hour and is just due north of the majority of the Azores Islands. And as you can see, tropical storm warnings are still up, as Helene is expected to bring tropical storm force winds to the area and is currently doing so right now, also expected to bring locally heavy rainfall. If you look at the satellite for Helene, you can see these outer rain bands are affecting the Azores right now, and they could bring locally heavy rain, and some flooding is also possible there. You can also see that the remnant, the Isaac has dissipated as of 5 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time on September 15th, which was today. And of course, the big story continues to remain Tropical Storm Florence, as Florence is still holding on tropical storm status. It is a 45 mile an hour tropical storm, even after spending almost 48 hours now over land, as it made landfall early Friday morning and is now Saturday night, and it's still holding on to tropical storm strength due to its proximity to the ocean. There's been 30 inches of rainfall reported in some areas as of now, with more still to come, and 7 deaths have been reported right now, as of now, and unfortunately more are likely to come. If we look at the radar now for Florence, you can see that these heavy rain bands from the right side of the storm are still impacting the Wilmington area and other areas of southeastern North Carolina. And this will continue even through tomorrow, and it probably won't stop for that area until Monday morning or even later than that, as the system is still moving very slowly to the west at just 2 miles per hour. So there's definitely going to be a lot more rain to talk about here in these areas. And you can also see the red boxes here. There are some tornado warnings popping up, and there have been some tornadoes confirmed as well in this area. So the tornado threat is still there, as is the flash flood threat, as there are flash flood warnings all throughout the southeastern North Carolina region, even areas northward into Raleigh and Charlotte. If you look at the 5-day cone now for Florence, you can see that the NHC finally has a weakening to a depression by Sunday afternoon as it finally starts to move away from the Carolinas. However, the rains will still be impacting the Carolina coast even until Monday afternoon as it approaches West Virginia. And at this time, it will just be the remnants, and then the remnants will be moving through the northeast, and then the system will head into the cold waters of the North Atlantic Ocean, where it should become a fairly strong extratropical cyclone. However, it will not be impacting any land masses by then. If you look at the model tracks for Florence, they all are in agreement that the remnants will move through Pennsylvania and then head out to sea. However, there are 2 models that do show it making a possible loop. However, I think this is very unlikely, as there's finally a trough from the west that should be pushing Florence out to sea over the next couple of days. So don't be fooled by these 2 models, as they are just outliers, and the majority of models do have it recurving out to sea after it's done impacting the northeast. If you look at the forecast GFS model now over the next 5 days, for the rainfall amounts, total accumulated precipitation, there's still a chance for at least another 10 inches to even up to a foot of more rain in South North Carolina right here near Wilmington. So on top of what's already fallen, so there could be up to 40 inches total when this is all said and done. And the NAM model has even more rain. If you put it into motion here, you can see that for a large area here of southern North Carolina, the NAM has 20 inches plus of rain falling to continue, and even up to 2 feet or more in some areas. So when it's all said and done and Florence is finally gone, then we could be talking about totals of up to 4 feet in some areas, which would be absolutely ridiculous and historic and catastrophic. If you look at the rainfall potential from the National Hurricane Center, you can see that it does have this area here where it could be up to 15 more inches of rainfall. So Florence is definitely not done yet. It's still going to be impacting the Carolinas and other areas even further inland over the next several days. The flash flood threat is also high in South and North Carolina, as there's a 50% chance or more of risk of flash flooding in this area here, and there's a moderate chance of flash flooding, 20% through and most of this area here in northern North Carolina, even some parts here in southern Virginia. However, after Florence is finally gone, then the tropics do look quiet, which is very great news for us, as we definitely need a break. If you look at the European model over the next 5 days, the European model has no areas of development, nothing to talk about here, just mostly high pressure. And if we look at the GFS over the next 5 days, it shows a similar scenario where there's going to be no tropical storms at all to talk about, not even any disturbances or invests. It's just going to be high pressure throughout the entire Atlantic Ocean as the tropics go quiet, which is great news for everyone. That's all for today. The next update will be tomorrow evening. Stay safe, everybody.